So Nigeria has a new chairman of its electoral body, INEC, Professor Josh Amupitan, senior advocate of Nigeria. There is a lot of work ahead of him. This is perhaps one of the most important offices in Nigeria because this is responsible for every other office that we then get, from president to the governors to the lawmakers, both at the federal and state level. So yes, this is a very, very important position. So you'll understand why we'll pay a lot of attention to that position this morning to spotlight the issues ahead of Professor Amupitan. I want to imagine that he understands the weight on his shoulder. There is a coming election in 2027, the general election, the all-important one. But there are off-cycle elections which will be handled by the states, the recs in the state, but there will also be some sort of pointer as to what to expect come 2027. There's issues of electoral amendment. Will that happen? Will that not happen? If it happens, how much time do we have to study it, implement it, and ensure that they are well implemented for the 2027 election? What also happens to the current laws, which some people have said, let's stay with the current one that we have, all right, and implement it well in terms of prosecution, election funding, campaign, party affairs. It is a lot for him to deal with. So have a panel on the program this morning to speak to those issues. We'll be joined by a professor of political science and international relations at Nasarawa State University, Professor Jidofo Adibe, as well as public affairs analyst, Mr. Jide Ojo. Both gentlemen, Professor joins us from our Abuja studio, and Mr. Jide Ojo joins us virtually. Thank you for coming on the program. I'll begin with you, Prof. First, I know this is meant to be some sort of congratulations for the academia. Yet again, you produced the INEC chairman. But I want to know how you received the announcement. You may have seen the build-up to it. His name has come up time and again, even days to that. But how did you receive the announcement, seeing his antecedent, his pedigree?
Yeah, good morning, Kaido. I think for me, the idea of embracing the professorate class on assumption that they have a higher moral ground and better acceptability, well, it's largely true, but many people prefer people, who have management experience. If you've not managed a big budget and suddenly you are thrust into an organization, an octopus like INEC, that may present a problem. It's not just about academic credentials, it's also about capacity to manage and being seen as a person who can withstand the inevitable pressures from the political class. Having said that, that position is a poison chalice. There's hardly anybody who has held that position and come out of it with his reputation intact. None. Even Mahmoud, people forget that he has a first-class honors in history. So it's not so much about your academic credentials, it's about system dynamics that will shake you up even when you're there. People talk about Professor Jega. I've told him, and I've said that repeatedly, the only reason Professor Jega is held as a relative example of a success is because Jonathan did not contest the outcome of the election. If he did, his own reputation would have also been solid as that of others before him. And there are other observations about, I don't know him that well, but within the academia, there is a tendency for people to, he did his first degree in JOS, LLB, LLM in JOS, PhD in JOS, professor in JOS. So some people believe it's incestuous and may tend to give somebody a very blinkered view of reality. The increasing trend now across the world is that if you have your degree, first degree here, you go another place and get it, and even diversify your degrees in order to broaden your own academic and intellectual horizons. But I'm not necessarily saying that you will have blinkered vision of reality, but we'll see how it plays out. More fundamentally is what will be the perception. Yes, he's from Kogi State, but he's ethnically a Yoruba. And let's see whether this will accentuate the allegations of Yorubanization against President Tinubu. In fact, just before I came to the studio, I was following an online controversy where some people were saying, well, the opposition now will be suffering from what they call Yoruba encirclement, because the chair of the electoral body will be Yoruba by extraction. The head of the police that will, police the elections, will be also Yoruba. And when it comes to adjudicating any outcome, the judiciary is also in their hands. Whether that is the kind of narrative that will, follow, we don't know. But usually before any major appointment, the appointing body will do kind of a political marketing. You try to elevate the candidate you want to present to the public. You present him as, a sound professor of law of evidence and expert on electoral litigation. These are expected. But after a day or two, you then come to more serious interrogation of the credentials of the candidate. Right now, I don't even believe that the body, whoever is made the INEC chair, will make fundamental difference, because it is a systemic issue. It is tied very much to the nature of electoral competition, where there is a pervasive fear that whichever group captures state power will use it to advantage its in-group and disadvantage others. And we've seen that perception, increasing in large from the time of Buhari, and has not, that perception gap has not narrowed under the Tinubu administration. So there's a perception problem that he has to face. There is the issue of capacity, and there is an issue of ability to withstand pressure. One of the things that was in favor of Professor Jega when he was appointed was, one, that Jonathan said he never knew him. Two, that he had credentials of being an ASU leader and somebody who had the capacity to resist authority. We'll see how this plays out with Professor Amupitan.
Oh, lots of issues you have raised, Prof. But let's ask Mr. Jide Ojo, having monitored elections as well. I'll come to you in a moment, Prof. But let me ask Mr. Jide Ojo. Prof has spoken about some of these other issues, his antecedents in the academia, his management experience or otherwise. But election-wise as well, putting all of this together, haven't seen the previous chairman. How important do you see his CV, his experience in the work that he has ahead of him, Mr. Ojo?
Thank you, Kado. Good morning, Nigerians. The issue is not about CV. It's about whether the system will give him free hand to work. I read the CV or the resume that was published by Mr. Bayo Ononuga yesterday. I can say I can tick the right boxes. He's relatively young at 58. VC admin in University of Jos. Senior advocate since 2014, married with 4 children, is a family man, is from North Central, Kogi, the first person from North Central to be appointed head of the election management body. But you see, my own perception is not about the person of Amupitan. It's about the system under which he's going to operate. Will that system be fair to him? Irrespective of who appoints or whoever you appoint, there will always be swelling controversies. There has never been any previous appointment that is devoid of controversy. Even when Professor Mahmoud Yakubu came in, people were referring to his antecedent. He was chairman, he was secretary of national conference. He was formerly in Tech Fund and all of that. And then people accused Buhari of appointing a northerner like him to superintend over election where he would be a candidate in 2019. So there will always be that controversy. Mamu Yakubu was a Muslim, like Buhari is from the north, like Buhari, so he possibly would favor Buhari. And irrespective, you can never please the entire universe in any choice you make. But what I want to advance our minds to is that who are the caliber of people he's going to be working with? There will be 12 national commissioners, and those 12 within making 13 are the policy makers for the commission. They are actually the commission. So we need to take the beam searchlight beyond the person of the chairman. He's not going to be a solo administrator like Ibas in Rivers. He's going to be working with a team of 12 other people from diverse backgrounds. Amongst them are lawyers, military general, administrators, people with diverse experience and background. And these are going to be the team that is going to have to compare to work with. Beyond these 12 people are also the 37 resident electoral commissioners who are the field marshals across 36 states and FCT. So if you arrogate too much power as if he can veto whatever and do whatever he likes, that's when issue of urbanization or whatever comes. Because the Constitution has even already made it clear that every region has to be represented in INEC. So the 12 national commissioners, 2 each are from the 6 geopolitical zones. And when issues have to be put to vote, if, for instance, there is a controversial issue and you have to vote upon it, and the rest of these 5 geopolitical zones are against it, that issue will die a natural death. The chairman of INEC does not have veto power. But beyond the politics of it, your background, you mentioned a series of issues that he needs to contend with. One of it is the electoral reforms, constitutional and electoral act amendment. When is that going to be concluded? I wrote in my column in The Punch 2 weeks ago, asking and pleading with the National Assembly to expedite actions. There are 142 issues that INEC earlier in the year highlighted that they need to fix ahead of the next general election. 142. And out of this, about 8 needs legal alterations. Where are we with that? There is no yet timeline for the completion of this amendment. Then, if there is no timeline, and INEC will have to submit the budget for 2026 in the course of this month to make it in the 2026 budget of the executive. How will INEC plan adequately? And as somebody who has worked with the Electoral Commission in the last 26 years, I will tell you for free that if you don't fund INEC in a timely manner, even with all the money in Central Bank of Nigeria, if the money comes late, it's going to impact negatively on the preparations for the elections. So let's not deceive ourselves about the pedigree or the person of the new INEC chairman. If the funding he needs is not released to him in a timeous manner, there will be negative impact on the elections. Then there is also the larger issue of administration. Now INEC does not have full complement of people to help him with the logistics of elections. So it depends on the National Union of Road Transport Workers, Road Transport Employers Association, Boat Owners Association for the logistics of election. It does not have the full complement of vehicles that it would need. So time and again, the memorandum of understanding signed with this caliber of people have been breached. And INEC carries the can. Despite paying these people, sometimes they fail to turn up at the critical moment when they are supposed to carry the materials to the rack center or from rack center to the polling unit. Then there is also the larger issue of recruitment, training and deployment of ad hoc staff. In the 2023 general elections, INEC had to recruit 1.4 million ad hoc staff. These ad hoc staff, you don't do background check on them, you don't know their political affiliations, you don't know whether they are persons of integrity. So you just recruit these wholesome people, 1.4 million, most of them youth corps members and members of the academia. And we have seen, as I speak with you now, there is a professor of soil science in University of Uyo who is serving a jail term, arising from subverting the electoral process in 2019 in Akwa Ibom State. Then there are 3 resident electoral commissioners whom President Bola Tinubu had to relieve of their appointment early this year because they subverted the process. So we need to look beyond the person and personality of INEC chairman and also look at other layers of responsibility. Because if they fail him, there is nothing he as an individual can do to give us credible elections.
Well, that's another side to it. So it's here and there. Let's talk about his person, his CV, his antecedents, because that will give us an insight into what he will be able to do. You say, well, there's also the bigger system issue. And absolutely, because we can pay a lot of attention to the chairman and not pay as much attention to the national commissioners or even the regs, or even people appointed to do the everyday work of election handling. Then we just realize that we have issues on our hands. But Prof, so Mr. Jide Ojo has also provided another side to this conversation, which makes it very holistic. We've heard the ADC say, don't be loyal to the president or the ruling party, be loyal to Nigerians, sort of let's wait and watch kind of approach. And it looks like that's what most of the other parties will do as well, because they've said, in fact, at some point he was a lawyer to a member of the opposition, right? So it's a very, at this point, it's still very early to sort of predict what he will do in office. So I wonder, do you agree as much with Mr. Jide Ojo in that argument?
I would say largely I agree with him, but I do not so much agree with the belief that the leadership, whoever is appointed, it doesn't matter because you are working in a collegial system. No, I don't think that's correct. The head sets the tone. And that's why there's always contentions when you are about to appoint heads of agencies and even the president of a country, even though people know there are supposedly checks and balances like the judiciary and the legislature. You can put up an argument, who does it matter who becomes the president? He will be checked. There's the National Council of States, there is the judiciary, there's, but we know that quite often there is a tendency for capture. The president captures the institutions. The head of any organization, most of the agencies, gets captured. And what happens is a struggle for access, to that head, especially somebody who is believed to have a charming relationship with the president. So to that extent, I would like to differ with my friend and brother Jide Ojo. But I also agree, but I would like to expand it beyond what INEC does to look at the systemic issues. It is all too easy for us to blame INEC. And as I mentioned, the nature of character of our electoral competition is very important. There is nobody, including me. In fact, some people have made a joke that if you were to bring a celestial body person and brings him to Nigeria to conduct the election, people will even start questioning whether the person came from above. So it is a part of what we have to think about our own political evolution. And while the reforms that were identified by Jide I agree with them, they can only probably make a dent. We have seen several reforms since the time of this dispensation, different reforms. What difference have those reforms made on the outcome, on the integrity of the elections? Would you say, for example, all those reforms have led to people believing more that their votes count? Or will you argue that it's led more to people withdrawing, delinking from the Nigerian system, delinking from the whole body of electoral competition because they don't think it makes a difference? In fact, there's a whole body of people now arguing that, look, this is just a waste of money. Even the outcome is predetermined. And even if it is not predetermined, they know what to do. They can ask you to go to court. If you get to the other arm that will checkmate, that the whole system to checks and balances, you take it to the legislature, what's going to happen? Your guess is as good as mine. People say it's a rubber stamp. Others say it's worse than a rubber stamp. So we have to start looking at, in terms of political evolution, that what is happening at the political arena cannot be isolated from what is happening at the general society. The people we appoint to offices, they themselves are not from the moon. They inevitably have backgrounds, and some people have made an argument, why would the president appoint the chairman of INEC when in an election he's to take a part in, which will be tantamount to asking a football team to appoint the referee in a game they were to contest. I see the logic, but I just disagree with it, because even if you say the Judicial Council, or I ask my brother Joe to go and appoint somebody and impose on the president, it just takes 1 week for a capture. If you remember what happened in the run-up to the 2019 election, how Onogen was removed, allegedly because they thought he was not going to, play ball if elections were to get to the Supreme Court. And then in the run-up to the 2023 election, people forgot, or tend to forget, that Mahmoud was also shaking in court when some people went to court, and allegedly that he, in his filings at the Code of Conduct, there were some discrepancies. And some people argued that there were political forces that used it to shake him up, and then weaken him. We don't know, but Nigeria is a very interesting place, and what is happening at the electoral arena is a reflection of what's happening in the wider society. I can tell you, if you go to some states, let me talk about my own state of Anambra, homogeneous and everything. You have town unions, and you'll be surprised that sometimes the outcome of those town union elections are so contentious that state government will have what do they call it? Appoint a caretaker committee. So it's what's happening at the electoral arena is a reflection of what's happening in the wider society, and we have to start to look at it, from a more holistic term rather than isolating INEC.
Right,
but that doesn't
just quickly
mean that we cannot, for the purposes of analysis, isolate INEC and say, look, these and these are the issues,
right?
Especially the issue of perception, and I think the issue of perception is important.
Definitely. Just before I go to Mr. Ojo, I need to put this in, Prof. There are those who have said academics, professors, lecturers, we've seen a trend that they're not well taken care of from time to time. ASU is at loggerheads with the government calling for payment of arrears, 2009 agreement, I should say. So some have said, if we continue to put people who are from this background into office, wouldn't they be easily compromised? So I want you to speak as maybe a representative of that constituency. Is that a fair argument to make?
Is that the question? I missed a big part, some parts of your question. If you come back again,
for those who have said perennially our lecturers have not been well taken care of, and case in point is ASU, still at loggerheads with government asking for in 2009 agreement arrears. So would that be fair to then place them in such position? Wouldn't they be easily compromised? These people have argued. So I'm asking, is that a fair argument?
Well, contentment is not necessarily a function of how much you have. And there is often an argument that people remember it's called the ivory tower, they tend to come with a certain degree of conviction. And you can still see, despite what we hear about lecturers and academics, you can still see several of them that you really don't shake, because material things don't mean so much to many of them. That's why they're called belonging to ivory tower. But of course, that's a generalization. And the issue of pay of university lecturers, I agree, is something that the government has to look into seriously. But again, that is again a reflection of what's happening in the general society. If you look at medical doctors and other cadre of staff, what you notice is the same system of underpayment. And this is again a reflection of the stage of development or underdevelopment of the country itself. So, but I don't think that if you extrapolate from your logic, it means that those who are very wealthy, if they get into office, it will be very difficult to compromise them. That's not really the truth. In fact, there was a philosopher, that said, who enunciated what we call the doctrine of the meat,
right,
where he said that the rich people are greedy for more, the poor are jealous of the rich, and the middle class are the stabilizing force, because they are neither too rich to be greedy nor too poor to be envious. So in that case, if you take the lecturers or the professors as being maybe lower middle class, you can see, while we have bad eggs everywhere, you can see quite a lot of contentment among many academics. You can even see it in an average academic. You give him one or two things, give him a house here, they don't tend to bother too much about things, because especially those who are in it as academics, not as cowboys.
All right. Well, thank you, Prof, for speaking for the constituency. But let me go to Mr. Jide Ojo now as we wind down. Give us a checklist of what must be done. Again, I don't see us having a lot of time till 2027. I just see maybe about some part of October, November. December is usually half month, and January, before all of the big politicking, the primaries and all of that happen. So in this short space of time, what must we do as a matter of urgency to ensure that both the INEC chair, those who will be appointed to support him, because a lot of the national commissioners will be either out of office from next year or 2027, early 2027. So we'll need like a fresh batch of electoral managers. So what are these things that must be done as a matter of urgency, Mr. Jide Ojo?
Well, while we wait on the National Assembly to conclude the electoral reform agenda that it has set for itself, there are a lot of administrative issues that needed to be taken up by Professor Amupitan, starting with issues around continuous voter registration exercise and some of the unfinished business around that. Recall that early in the year, the INEC said some of the voters may not necessarily need the permanent voters card, that they can have a computer-generated slip to have their accreditation and voting. So they need to consummate on that. They need to do something about the allocation of voters into polling units. Right now, you see some polling units where you have 1,500, 2,000, and the adjoining polling units, we have only 50 people. So this is quite disproportionate. They need to take on that and say that maximum of 500 people are allotted per polling unit. But there are so many other electoral reform issues that, for instance, even the timing of election. Remember, we used to have elections 8 to 2 p.m. Now, because of logistical challenge, INEC has shifted to 8:30 to 2:30 p.m. It doesn't need any electoral law amendment to know whether we need to move our election to start from 9 a.m. to maybe 3 p.m. I saw that in Egypt when I went there in 2014. Election in Egypt is from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Although they have infrastructure, they have light, and elections are held within the classroom. And even in Egypt, you don't need permanent voters card or voters card. Your national ID card is what you need to vote. So some of these administrative issues, Professor Amupitan needs to take them headlong. There are 142 issues, like I said, and if he could take on some of them within the purview of what he can control and the budget that is available, that would be fine. We have the wider issue of Electoral Offenses Commission. Will that see the light of the day ahead of 2027? We do not know. National Assembly has been dilly-dallying on that, whether they will approve or disapprove. Issue of party registration. Remember that Professor Mahmoud Yakubu could not conclude the registration of new political parties. 40 of them were pre-qualified. Are they going to be licensed, or will they be dropped? We do not know. So quite a lot will be on his plate. And let me tell you that about 6 national commissioners tenure will end sometime soon. So we may be having some appointments in the coming days to replace them, because I recall that it's not only Professor Mahmoud Yakubu that came in 2015.
Indeed.
That he came alongside with about 6 national commissioners. So we are going to be having some fresh hands. But the good news is that the election management body have become a routinized institutions where there is a lot of institutional memory.
Indeed.
In fact, what the trend now is that some of the directors have been appointed as national commissioner or resident electoral commissioner. So they have history, they have institutional memory that can help to stabilize the institution. But we should avoid state capture.
Right.
That is the greatest and most worrisome fear I have. State capture of that management body should be resisted by civil society and media.
Mr. Jide Ojo, thank you so much for those points, particularly on state capture, and for your points about the work ahead of the new INEC chairman, Professor Josh Amupitan. We also have to thank Professor Jidofo Adibe for your interventions as well, and for speaking for the constituency. Thank you for your time, and wish you the very best.
Thank you.
And just to say that, well, the commission members whose tenure will be expiring next year include Professor Abdullahi Zuru, Dr. Baba Bila, Professor Sonny Adam, and Professor Ajayi Kunle, all national commissioners. The tenure will be expiring September, October 2026, and more would leave office in 2027. So that's where we leave it for this conversation. Clearly not the end, but we'll take a moment. When we return, we'll talk about the economy, protecting investors, protecting the poor, the World Bank poverty figures, the contention by the presidency, and all of that. That's in a moment. Stay with us.